Right. Good afternoon, people. We are going to look at lecture 2 today in project management and software. In this lecture, we want to look at the organization factors and the system requirements that are needed for a software to be implemented and to be used and benefit from those uh, advantages we talked about last time. So now, if the organization thinking of installing the software for the project management, they have to take care of these two things. They have to take care of the organization factors and they have to look at the system requirements of what they're going to have. Now, let's talk about the organization factors. What are the organization factors that you need to consider as you want to embark on the new software? The first one is management support. The second one is staffing. Third one is training. Then the fourth one is accommodation. Now, what is it that you need to consider under this factor, the management support? To begin with, in every project to become successful, there should be the support of management. If management is unable to support any project, any activity in an organization, it is bound to fail. So that's why the first thing that needs to consider as we embark on the project of implementing the software in the organization, you have to have the management support, which means management should embrace the idea of having the software and they should provide support in terms of financing it and also providing psychological help and physical help to the people that are going to implement the project in an organization. So the project manager has to ensure that the facilities are available and mostly the hardware and the specialized software before endpoint can be scheduled by the computer. So when we talk about support of management, we are talking about the management to ensure that all the facilities we need as able to are available, but more especially the hardware and software requirements of the project you want to embark on. So the vital factor, as in so many cases, is the commitment and the support provided by organization higher management. As earlier alluded to, for any project to succeed, there must be support of management. So this is a very important factor that needs to be cushioned and sorted out, because if it is not there, we expect that projects will fail. So once there is assurance that management will support the project, there is guaranteeing that the software implementation in this organization will be successful. All right? Now, what about staffing? Staffing is very important. Look at the situation where the company was using the paper-based systems or the manual system to do their project activities. It means even the staff that were in that arrangement didn't have IT skills. So as you embark on implementing the software in your organization, it means there will be a need for people with some IT skills. And if they're not available, you need to provide new staff. You need to recruit. So the bottom line is, as the point number one is saying, there should be at least one expert in the house in the use of the system. At least one other who can take over in the case of absence or emergency. So if we don't want to change the whole staff, at least you must have two members of staff that are IT skilled. Because why need two? The point is saying in case one is not available, one should take over and make the operation run smoothly. Because you cannot overemphasize the point that once you implement the software in the company, you must have people who understand those applications, the hardware equipment, and NICT infrastructure, simply put. Okay. Otherwise, the number of people who depend on the project overload will actually not do the actual work, right? Because they won't use the computer because they don't have the skills. So this is the reason why you need to have the skilled people in this area. So I've seen if you're trying to embrace ICT in your project operations, think of staffing. Otherwise, if you cannot do that, there's another alternative: training. Train. So if you cannot employ people who can actually use the computers and do the projects, you must think of training their valuable staff. It's very crucial for any success of what the project. So they must be trained. Those you have, if they're trainable, if they are going to avail themselves for training, they're not rigid, do that. Train them so that they can have those skills and do a smooth transition to the software applications in your project activities. All right. So again, we can say even if you're going to employ new people, okay, to do the IT operations, you must also remember that IT evolves almost every day. So training again has to be considered seriously. Right. So training will serve two purposes. One, the people that you want to use the computer who are not IT enabled need to have the skills, so train them. Secondly, the software applications they are enhanced or modified almost every day. So there will be a need for training the staff every time there's a new application that you want to use in your organization. Now, what about accommodation? Accommodation, basically, we're talking about the space required for planning and keeping project files, materials, network drawings. Remember, with the incoming of the software, there must be new accommodation facilities. Yes, without computers, you used to keep the files in the cabinet files and the like. But with the incoming of computers, okay, there must be a very suitable storage for the hard drives, okay, and also other facilities that will support the use of the ICT. So in this way, you have to think about the backup facilities because you need to back up the work. Remember, the backing facility requires that you don't put everything in one basket. That is not good because what's the purpose of backup if everything is in one basket? You know the danger of that? If that basket is destroyed, everything is destroyed. So the backup loses its meaning. So you provide two different locations for backing up, and that will connect what we're discussing as what accommodation. Very, very important aspect. So away from organization factors you need to think about. Now, you need also to think about the system requirements. So now there are two basic requirements of the system that you need to think about. That is the hardware that you're going to use. Hardware is supposed to be sufficient in terms of speed and capacity. Okay, so you have to think about the hard drive size, the RAM size, the speed of CPU, all those facilities that supports hardware. We need to look at them. And also for suitable software, we need to think about, of course, there are so many on the market, so many vendors of software, which helps in project management. So now the question is, which one is suitable? Because if there are so many, it means there are so many applications that can be wrong also, right? So the choice is critical. The selection of the good software is also critical. So you have to think about that as well. And not to forget, once you acquire all these, the software and the hardware, you must think about maintenance. Maintenance in an organization takes about 85% of all activities in ICT department. Because it's ongoing, it's what you do almost every day. Okay? You only install one, you only install the application once, you only acquire the hardware once, but after that, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be fired or stop working? It means now your work is to maintain the software installed and the hardware that you have assembled to do your work. So maintenance need to be also considered for both hardware and software. Right. So now when we talk about hardware, You know, a computer basically has two main components, the things that we're talking about. The hardware, these are the physical components of the computer, things that you can see, touch, and feel. These are what you call hardware components. For example, you can touch the keyboard, you can touch the mouse, you can touch the screen. Okay, hard drive, anything that you can touch and see with your naked eyes, we call them what? Hardware. So the base minimum requirements or specification of the type of computer, okay, to run the type of model project may mostly be ascertained by the software suppliers. What does it mean? It simply means, people, that software dictate the type of hardware you're going to use. All right, it's not the other way around. So you cannot have a small hardware and then you buy a very complicated, large, big software. It won't run on that small, weak hardware. Right? It will fail. So if you're going to buy a big, complicated software, you must think of having also a bigger, okay, hardware that's going to accommodate that software. Even humans, okay, there's that confusion, that problem. If the hardware cannot support your brain power, brain activities, sometimes other body members are sacrificed. So in the same way, if the software is too big, the hardware is very small, you expect that the operations will not go smoothly. The computer will fail you. Okay, you wish as if you can do actually do things manually as opposed to having a computer. So who would like that? So that is bad. So you must think of, okay, the hardware I'm going to buy, what is the software am I going to buy? Okay, remember, the software dictates the hardware. So now, even the printers, you must be able to look at whether you just go for a normal printer, or you can go for a plotter, industrial printer that prints on large sheets of paper. That's your choice you need to make. You know, a printer normally prints on small scale, like A4 paper, but a plotter will print on large sheets, right? For analysis, for example, want to analyze a network data and you're planning for a project. Would you like to print out on small paper, or would you like to print out on a large paper? So those are questions that you need to ask, okay, if we are considering the type of hardware we want for the software we're going to implement. Right. What about the software? Okay, as much as you said software dictate the hardware, we must also remember that there must be plenty wrong softwares available. Thus, this is the reason why you need to be very, very careful to choose the software that will satisfy your needs. That's the key point. Software is supposed to satisfy what you want. 80%, 80-20 rule will work here. So 80% of the activities you are doing need to be satisfied by the software you're going to buy. Right? If possible, 100%. That's what we want, to avoid dead code. Buying the software that has so many features that you don't want. Right? And just use maybe 2% or 20% of those features. That is going to be wasteful, because such a software is going to put pressure on the hardware and the computer becomes slow, right? For which, if all those 80% unwanted features of software were eliminated, the computer would have been very, very fast, because they are going to operate on 20% of what you want. So you need to look at the best software that will meet your needs. So but fairly, reasonably, price and effective products can be found. So which means not just satisfying your needs, but also you need to think about the software that is not too expensive, not too cheap, okay, but something that will actually meet your needs, which is under your budget, not over budget, because in that way you won't buy it. Maintenance, as I alluded to, maintenance of hardware and software is actually very, very important. If you don't maintain the hardware, it will actually fail even before its time. Okay, which means the chances of buying software and hardware frequently are very high. But if you maintain it, you prolong the lifespan of the equipment you have, thus saving cost and also allowing the system to serve you for quite a long, long time and realize all the benefits of the software. So you need to have maintenance because it's going to guarantee that you're going to benefit from the software for quite a long time, hence saving the cost. So free upgrades on the software and its documentation should be assured. Alright? So don't just buy the software. This point actually, right? The point here is trying to underscore or actually emphasize a point that when you're buying the software, you must ensure that the software that you are buying has documentation and some facilities for upgrade. Remember, due to the demand on the market, the software vendors, they don't have all the time in the world to complete the software at once. So what they do is they'll make software and they will make some advancements on the software. Let's say, for example, they do 80% of the work on the software and the demand on the market is very high. They will deploy this software on the market, which is 80% done. And what about the 20%? Have they actually cooked you? No. This 80%, this 20% remaining is the one that will be coming in bits and pieces as updates altogether, plus other features that will be looked at while the software is running. The difficulties, the questions, the comments you're going to make on the software, they will come together with what? This remaining 20% of the software. So now, if your software does not permit updates, it means if you are given 80% of the software, you'll be using this 80% forever, which means 20% of it you won't enjoy all those benefits, right? So it won't grow, it won't be scalable. So that's why you need to have the software that has enabled updates, and also that will allow some documentation to be accompanied with it. Because in that way, in case of anything, you can actually support. You can do a technical support on the system yourself, as opposed to always calling the customer service for any technical support. Right. So let's move on. So what's the criteria for software selection? We have actually talked about some of these things, in our discussion. Software selection is a very critical process. One of the things to consider is reliability. Reliability of the software is very, very important, right? So reliability simply means the software is dependable, right? It brings up the concept of modularity or the easy which the package can be modified. So if the software buying allows this element of modification, further modification, it's a very good software, right? And if the software can be executed in a specified period of time frame without any failure, is also a very good thing to consider. So reliability means the system can actually be executed for some time without any failures, and it can allow further modification later on. What about this other element? Functionality. Functionality, we are talking about the system is able to do what it is defined to do. Right? If the system was meant to add 1 plus 1, it should be adding 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. Right? So the system should do what it was defined to do. Alright. What about capacity? We refer to the capability of the software to handle the users. The high number of users. That's capacity. Some software, they don't allow beyond 10 users on the same application. For that limitation. So now you have to look at your company, your organization. Does it allow, would you need, for example, 20 users to use the software at a time? If that's the case, then this is the best requirement to consider. Flexibility. It is the measure of effort required to modify an operational program. So the software should be adaptable. Changes should be enabled without so many difficulties. Right, usability. Usability basically from the word itself you can see is okay, the ability for the users to find it easy to use the system. Basically, user friendliness. Alright? So the system should be easy for the users to use. In that way it is usable. Portability. Alright? So will the software be able to be installed on different platforms or just one platform? So if you're going to have different platforms, different computers, you have to consider this element of portability. Will this software just be installed on Linux, for example? Or can it also work on Windows or Android? Okay, what about the hardware brands, IBM or Dell or HP? So I have to look at all those facilities, and that's what portability normally refers to. All right, security-wise, we need the software that is secure and protected. That will protect your files. Not so software that is prone to attacks. In that way, there will be issues. Performance, we're talking about the throughput, okay, the expected results, right? Are they actually given at a requirement of the speed that we need, right? Or is the software able to do more than one thing? Is it efficient? So that's what we talk about when we say performance, all right? Then serviceability, so this is the criteria focus on documentation and vendor support. So the software should be supported, right? Not just you buy and forget about me. Buy my product, don't come back. That is not a good thing. So you must be able to buy the software and they must guarantee that the same people can offer some technical support, can come and guide you in case of anything. Ownership. So ownership is very important, right? Very, very important. So ownership basically we're talking about the rights to access the software, right? So when you buy the software, you must own it. No one should be able to control it on your behalf. Like most of these freewares that you get, because you don't own them, someone can put hardwares, the advert software that you pin up every time that you're using the application, they're quite detective because it's not yours. You don't have full control of it, right? So we need this element. The minimal cost. So the cost is a major consideration deciding between in-house and vendor software. So the in-house software is the one that you develop within the organization, specifically to take care of the needs. The vendor software is the one that you buy. All right. So people, this is the end of lecture 2. I hope you have enjoyed the lessons and the content of this lecture. So I advise you to go through it, watch it several times to master the concepts you have covered today. Thanks very much.